This is PropertyBT, a podcast of BT correspondents.
Malls, HDB shops, retail shop houses, these throng our cityscape. But do we love our retail spaces enough to ensure that physical retail in this island has a bright future? Perhaps we prefer shopping online or overseas and going abroad to wine, dine and party. Let's get to grips with what is happening with physical retail spaces in Singapore and what the future holds for such spaces. Welcome to PropertyBT. I'm Leslie Yee, Senior Correspondent of the Business Times. My guest today is a passionate advocate for the transformation of the retail landscape. Warmest welcome, Ethan Hsu, Head Retail, Knight Frank, Singapore.
Thank you, Leslie. It's good to be here.
Ethan, we are a nation of foodies. Yet, the local F&B scene appears to be struggling. Many F&B outlets, including some long-established ones, have been shutting shop. The numbers reported by various listed F&B groups are not pretty. Ethan, why are many F&B outlets closing? Is high rent to blame?
Well, I think rent is one stress factor, but there are several inherent structural issues within the F&B sector that are responsible for the current industry churn. So besides rent, there are also rising costs such as food costs, utilities, wages, etc. The second issue is the labor shortage within the industry that seems to be creating this perpetual labor crunch due to restrictive foreign worker quotas in this sector, which is not particularly popular with local workers. And then the next thing is, which is actually the more worrying one, is the weakening demand and softer consumer spending. Because locals are tightening their belts and choosing to save their money for overseas travel, demand is actually not there. And of course, lastly, it's the tougher competition from big international chain brands with deeper pockets coming in to fight for a slice of the pie, which really isn't very large when you look at the population in Singapore. So that is why we are seeing the current industry churn, where concepts that are not differentiated enough won't last very long, especially in Singapore where consumers are spoiled for choice and the customer pool is fairly limited in our little red dot.
Ethan, you refer to the increased competition in the F&B space. Well, over the years, actually, the proportion of space at many malls occupied by F&B has been rising, right?
Mm-hmm.
But with this tough scene now, are we at a saturation point here in the number of F&B outlets? Will the amount of space occupied by F&B operators at malls grow or shrink going forward?
Well, I think this really has to do with the position that we are currently in for the retail scene. Because with the advent of e-commerce, the kind of traits that require physical spaces in the malls would then become naturally more service-based kind of traits, right? Things like hair, beauty services, your F&B, because you can't do these things online. And very often, because F&B is something that people still need as a daily necessity, kind of a essential service, which is why the number of spaces available in the mall that are allocated to F&B traits is currently quite high, and I think that it will continue to grow.
So you think it can go higher?
I think that it will grow higher mostly because the other traits don't require those spaces as much, right? So without fashion retailers coming into the scene to take up the space, without electronics, without IT gadgets, that leaves most of the time it's F&B that continues to want to innovate, to grow, because everybody, like it or not, I'm not sure why, but there is some romantic kind of sentiments to people always wanting to start their own F&B because it's so relatable, right? A younger generation have their ideas because they're well-traveled, they've seen different F&B concepts overseas, so they want to try and do something here back at home. So I think that we will still see F&B grow, but the type of concepts that will become successful and can sustain in the long term would be those that are highly differentiated and that can find that own unique space to operate within.
You also referred to online retail. Online retail has decimated high street retail in many cities globally. Yet retail property in Singapore, I think, has generally weathered the onslaught of online shopping rather well. Ethan, going forward, will online shopping inflict more damage on Singapore's physical retail spaces?
Well, I think online shopping is definitely here to stay, but it's not the death of physical retail or shopping malls, especially for Singapore. In fact, in Singapore, the proportion of online retail sales compared to total retail sales had always been quite stable and quite low actually, hovering around 5 to 7%, prior to COVID. And during the circuit breaker months, when most of the physical retail shops were forced to close and people were working from home as the default position, e-commerce sales peaked at around 25% of total retail sales. However, that number was quickly normalized, and now that things have stabilized somewhat post-pandemic, we are seeing online retail sales averaging between 12 to 15% of total retail sales. So I think it's quite clear that human beings are wired to need social interaction and sensory engagement, and these can't be fully met through online platforms. So looking ahead, online retail will still continue to grow, but it will coexist with brick and mortar stores. Some retail segments may tend to skew towards online channels, such as everyday consumer goods like groceries, fashion, electronics, IT equipment, and household items. But other categories like luxury retail, lifestyle, services, food, and entertainment, these will still heavily rely on physical spaces. So I don't think it's so much as a online versus offline thing, but more about how the two can complement each other, with e-commerce acting as a catalyst for the broader retail ecosystem.
Interesting. So I suppose people like to interact in interesting spaces.
That's right.
And in Singapore, I suppose with compact homes, good transport, going out is still a very much a way of life.
Yes, and people can shop all the way, at night because there's no issue with security. We have 24-hour malls that still are quite popular with our younger generation as well, like to have something to do at night.
I personally have not gone in these wee hours.
You
I'm
should
not
try,
sure.
actually. Mustafa is the most happening at 2 a.m.
Okay. The retail landscape as a whole is challenging. I think one bright spot has been rapid expansion by Chinese brands in Singapore. Ethan, what is driving Chinese brands to expand here? And do you see Chinese retailers growing their physical footprint further in our city-state?
I think actually for sure they will grow because the interest for Chinese brands to come to Singapore is very high. It's not just because Singapore is a bright spot to locate a brand, but also because domestically China brands are unable to expand in China beyond a certain point because of either, saturation within the domestic sectors or the issues being faced domestically with certain sectors not doing well. So to grow further, they have to go beyond their shores. So Singapore being in a very strategic location and also with the ease of language, they find that it is a natural gateway for them to actually branch into Asia and the rest of the world. So I think that we will still continue to see more of such brands because Chinese market is very big, right? What we've seen currently up to now, it's probably only the tip of the iceberg. And I think that there will be more innovative, interesting brands that we will be seeing in the future. And well, like it or not, I think that will give our local brands a run for their money.
So watch this space, I guess. There may be much
I
more
think so. Yes.
Chinese brands, maybe some which we have not heard of that will land on our shores. Huh?
Yes.
Ethan, let's switch focus and look at close neighbor Malaysia's Johor Bahru or JB. Many Singapore residents flock to JB, right? To wine, dine, get their spectacles done, see the dentist, get a massage and so forth. In part due to the Singapore dollar to Malaysian ringgit exchange rate, costs can be much lower for many goods and services in JB. Ethan, are retailers and landlords here suffering from Singapore residents going to Johor Bahru to shop?
Cross-border shopping definitely adds pressure to the local retail scene. But the bigger issues are still anchored within our domestic retail industry. The things that we've spoken about earlier, rising costs, manpower, challenges, and changing consumer habits. So if we look at some stats, some reports have estimated that Singaporeans spent about $1.5 billion in Johor in 2023. Now, that's a sizable number, but still small compared to Singapore's total retail spend of around $42 billion a year. At the end of the day, the shopping experience in Singapore and Johor is very different, and both markets can carve out their own niche. So retailers and landlords have to dig deeper into finding that unique wow factor to attract and retain their customers. Because people will always want different things and be willing to pay for what they deem to be of value to them. So we just got to give people what they want.
By the end of next year, the Rapid Transit System link or RTS link between Singapore's Woodlands North Station and Bukit Chaga Station in JB will start running, right?
That's right.
So the travel time will be about 5 minutes possibly. Clearing immigration is planned to be efficient. Fares are likely to be kept affordable. Will the RTS drive an even greater boom for JB retailers? What do you think?
Honestly, I think we will see more leakage, definitely, for sure. It's a little bit like Hong Kong and Shenzhen, right? I mean, it's about 5 minutes by train if you really want to cross over the border. It's very, very close by. And a lot of Hong Kongers do go to Shenzhen over the weekend and spend their money there because there's more variety and it's cheaper. I foresee that will also be the case for Singapore and Johor, which is why I think that the more realistic and practical thing to do is, rather than to stop it from happening, is to think about how to design our retail concepts and get our retail malls to complement or provide something that we are good at. We are definitely not able to fight them in terms of price because the exchange rate itself is already, puts us at a disadvantage. But I think what we can do is really to be known for the kind of quality retail experience that we can provide to our local residents and visitors to Singapore to get them to try and stay and play in the city for as long as they can. That will, to me, be the best way of addressing this issue of overseas leakage.
So I guess your message to mall owners is to work harder and make sure that they have a good value proposition.
Yes, I mean, that will always be the case for retail malls and retail industry. We have to keep reinventing and growing because it's a dynamic sector. It relates to people's lifestyles, and people's lifestyles will change and evolve over time. We have to keep up with those trends and be able to give people what they need, or even to show them what they need before they even know they need it. So to me, that will be the best strategy moving forward.
Still to come, what is the state of play in Orchard Road? Also, does Singapore's nightlife scene have a future? That's after the break.
Lens on Singapore is now bigger and better. The same deep dive exploration of socioeconomic and geopolitical issues which impact our lives here in Singapore and the region is now a video podcast. If watching a conversation is your thing, join Clarissa Montero in monthly conversations about things that matter. Subscribe to the BT Lens On playlist in the podcast tab of the Business Times YouTube channel and start watching today. BT Lens On Singapore, now available in audio and video.
And now, back to PropertyBT, a podcast of BT correspondents.
Welcome back to PropertyBT. I'm Leslie Yee. Let's now look at how various segments of retail property are doing in Singapore and try to understand what is driving the variance in performance across different segments and properties. Ethan, what segments of retail property here are thriving and which are struggling?
Well, in every retail segment, within each segment itself, there will already be winners and losers depending on the operator's business model and strategy. So even in F&B, which we have seen several closures recently, there are bright spots that have managed to weather the storm. By and large, we are seeing more resilience in sectors such as luxury goods like watches, jewelry, branded labels, specialized services like beauty, wellness, education and enrichment, as well as experiential venues like entertainment, leisure and recreation. While on the other hand, large department stores and undifferentiated mass market outlets are struggling. Consumers now have easy access to online shopping platforms where cheaper alternatives are widely available across a broad range of products. So the middle ground has actually become the toughest space to operate in, particularly amid rising costs and intensifying competition. And operators who cannot effectively differentiate themselves or carve out a unique niche will find it increasingly difficult to survive.
In Singapore, Orchard Road is synonymous with shopping. Still, some people wonder if Orchard Road has lost its magic. Locals might not bother visiting it given they can access great retail experiences at suburban malls. Can Orchard Road match the shopping experience in other Asian or Western cities? Also, are the shops at Marina Bay Sands or Jewel Changi Airport more exciting shopping destinations? Ethan, how do you rate the Orchard Road shopping experience today?
Orchard Road as a lifestyle destination is pretty unique when you compare to other global lifestyle destinations because it's very long stretch of road. We're talking about at least 5 kilometers of distance to play with, to remake that experience. For me, Orchard Road needs to be designed around the visitor experience, catering to different people, purposes and price points. Some may want to take off a specific task like buying a gift or running errands, and others may be there to explore, discover something new or learn a new skill. Or sometimes it's just to meet friends and socialize over a meal. So if we can imagine Orchard Road not just as a shopping street, but as a multi-layered experience hub, a place where retail, dining, entertainment, education, culture, social engagement can coexist, we can then create something much more compelling. Spaces can be mixed to have an integration of flagship experiential stores, rotating pop-ups, interactive events, curated F&B offerings for day and night, and even having more green public spaces for people to gather. At the end of the day, Orchard Road's strength will come from diversity, curation, and experience, not just the number of shops or the size of the malls.
Great, Ethan. I hope your excitement for Orchard Road pans out and the street continues to grow.
One can always hope.
I no longer participate in Singapore's nightlife scene, but years back, places like Zouk at Jakim Street, Sparks at Ngee Ann City, drinking holes along Boat Quay, these were among places I frequented. Today, though, Singapore's nightlife scene appears to be struggling. Are our young people not partying enough? What's wrong? Ethan, how dire is the state of Singapore's nightlife scene today?
I think nightlife scene in Singapore is evolving as well. Do I think that nightlife scene in Singapore has a future? I think absolutely, 100% yes. Because every developed city with a thriving economy and strong tourism sector needs a vibrant nightlife scene. And Singapore is no different. The real question isn't whether nightlife has a future here, but what kind of nightlife that future would look like. And I think we're moving towards a more curated, high-quality night economy. It's not about the clubs, the dance clubs, the nightclubs, or karaoke bars anymore. It's more about late-night dining, live music, arts and cultural events, rooftop experiences, and precincts that blend retail, F&B, and entertainment in smarter ways. And with the right mix of licensing flexibility, strong safety standards, and reliable late-night transport, nightlife can absolutely bounce back. And we are already seeing efforts in this direction. Authorities have piloted extending trading hours, reopened licenses in selected precincts, and invested in placemaking initiatives to activate areas at night. So if we get it right, I think Singapore's nightlife can evolve into a 24-hour economy that supports tourism, creates jobs, and gives residents more reasons to stay and play in the city after hours. And hopefully that will also help to lower some of the need to go overseas to have a good time.
Which overseas destinations do people in Singapore go to for nightlife?
A lot of people venture around the region. Cities like Bangkok, Hong Kong, Seoul, Tokyo. Each of these cities have their own unique nightlife scenes. So I'm hoping that Singapore can also create our own brand of nightlife to really offer our local residents as well as visitors a unique taste of what the nightlife scene can be.
Ethan, you have generously shared on the state of play with retail and lifestyle properties in Singapore, the challenges and the opportunities. Thank you to my guest, Ethan Hsu of Knight Frank Singapore.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
That's it for Property BT this time. Happy property hunting. BT correspondents will be back with an all-new episode on markets, so do subscribe to our channel and check it out. If you have any thoughts or questions about the show, email us at btpodcasts@sph.com.sg. I'm Leslie Yee. As always, thank you for listening. See you next week.
This is a podcast by the Business Times. Find more BT podcasts at businesstimes.com.sg/podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. This podcast is meant to provide general information only. SPH Media accepts no liability for loss arising from any reliance on the podcast or use of third parties' products and services. Please consult professional advisors for independent advice.